All right, so in this video we will look at an example of solving a problem using bundling as a type of indirect or second-degree price discrimination. So recall that price discrimination means we're selling two different goods or goods to two different types or more of consumers at different prices. And so in second-degree price discrimination, you may recall that we do not observe different types of consumers, although we know they're out there. And typically, they'll have different valuations, that is to say, different willingness to pay for a good. And so we set different tiers, and we allow them to select in based on their purchases. So one way that we can do this using second-degree price discrimination is by bundling, that is to say, take goods and put them in packages together. And ultimately, our goal here is to come up with a pricing scheme that maximizes profits. So just like anything we'll do, whether it's determining a level of production or some kind of a pricing scheme, our goal is to maximize profits. So in this example, let's suppose that we're running a coffee shop. I'm a coffee shop in a college building, and so I'm selling two goods, coffee and bananas. And I know that each of these goods comes with a constant marginal cost. So in this case, coffee has a constant marginal cost of 10 cents per unit, and bananas have a constant marginal cost of 40 cents per unit. And this is just the cost associated with production. And then let's assume that I have two types of consumers here. High value types, that is to say they have a high willingness to pay for my good, and low value types. And in this case, they're going to be different based on the good that I'm selling. Now, of course, we can't determine or distinguish between the two types, but I know that they're in equal proportion in this market, and that's just an assumption that'll make our calculation easier. But what we do have the opportunity to do some market research, and so let's just assume that I did some market research and determined each type's valuations. That is to say, I know what the willingness to pay for each of these types is for my goods, and this is like doing some kind of a demand estimation procedure. And so in the table I simply list the value of each good per each type. So I know that they're early class types, and early class types value coffee more than they value bananas. So the early class types value coffee at 70 cents, and they value bananas at 50 cents. So they value coffee a little bit more than they do the food, whereas the late class types are going to value coffee at 60 cents and have a willingness to pay for bananas of $1. And again, we're in cents here. So the late class types are going to value bananas more than coffee, and the early class types are going to value coffee more than bananas. And again, I can't observe these types of students, but I know they come in equal proportion. So our procedure here is going to be to compare the profitability of different pricing schemes for these goods. We're going to start by pricing them separately, and we're going to compare the different pricing schemes with those in bundles. And ultimately, we will determine what's going to sell based on demand. So we'll fill out some tables, and we'll see what our sales are going to be based on our demand estimations up top. And then we find the profitability based on the total revenue and total cost relationship. Now the trick here, the way to set this problem up, is not just to compare total revenues and total cost, but we're going to assume that there's a single consumer of each type. And this will allow us to determine what our sales are going to be. And we can do this because we know that even though we can't observe the different consumers' types, we do know that they're in equal proportion as depicted above. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at pricing separately. I know I'm selling coffee and bananas, so I just need to assign a price to each of these goods. So let's start by pricing coffee. And let's price coffee at 70 cents, which is the willingness to pay for the high value person in the early classes. So if we sell at 70 cents, the first thing we do is we try to ask ourselves how many we know we're going to sell. So we're going to sell one in this case because we know that only the early class people are going to be buying this good. And so that means our total revenues per coffee, if we sell one unit, will be total revenues of 70. However, I have a total cost associated with selling one unit of 10 cents, and so my total profits of selling a cup of coffee in this case, producing a cup of coffee and pricing at 70 will be net profits of 60 cents on that cup of coffee. The next thing we want to do is price coffee. But we're going to price coffee at the lower valuation, which is 60 cents. And of course, 60 cents was the valuation for the late class individuals. So my late class individuals, we know that they'll buy at 60, but the early class people will buy at 60 as well. So I know I'm going to sell 2 cups of coffee. And if I sell 2 cups of coffee, my total revenues at 60 cents will be $1.20. However, I have to subtract the total cost associated with that, so I know that at a marginal cost of 10 cents per unit, and I sell 2, my total costs are going to be 20. And that results in total profits of exactly $1. Okay, so if we priced coffee separately, we know that we're going to end up having higher profitability at 60. So I'm going to put a star there to represent the pricing for coffee individually that's more profitable. Now we're going to do the same thing for bananas. First, I'm going to price bananas at a price of 50. Now 50, of course, is the lower price, and we know that this was the valuation of the early class people. So our consumers that go to early classes had a willingness to pay a 50, and we know that the late class people are willing to buy it at $1. And so we know that if we price at 50, we'll end up selling 2 bananas. If we sell 2 bananas at 50 cents, it's going to be $1 in total revenues. However, we have to subtract the total costs. We know that we're selling 2 units at 40 cents a piece, so I end up having total costs of 80 cents, which means my profitability for selling bananas at 50 cents is only going to be 20 cents. And then finally, we're going to price bananas. But we're going to price bananas at a higher price. And in this case, we're going to price them at $1, which is the valuation of the the late morning people. So these late morning people were willing to pay $1 per banana. We know that at a price of $1, only one person will be buying bananas. That will be in the late class type, or one consumer type, I should say. And so we'll sell 1 for total revenues of $1. We have to subtract the total costs associated with selling 1 unit, which in this case is 40 cents, and we'll end up with total profits of 60 cents. For pricing bananas at $1, and I might put a little star there to represent that those individual pricings allow me to maximize profits. And so the last thing I can do is I can say, if I price separately and I want to maximize profits, we'll choose this pricing scheme. Price coffee at 60 cents and bananas at $1. That means my total profits associated with this level of pricing is going to be the profits associated with each of those pricing schemes. So I'll end up with profits of 160, not 160 cents. Let's call it $1.60. So if I only priced separately and did not price discriminate, I would end up with this optimal pricing scheme for pricing separately. Now, let's do the same thing for bundles. And remember, with bundles, what we're doing is we're offering a bundle. We will not allow people to price separately or buy separately. So we're trying to find the optimal bundle. Let's price a bundle of 1 coffee and 1 banana. And that bundle is going to be the price $1.20. So $1.20. This is put together by looking at the prices in the demand estimation that are the lowest. So in this case, this would be a bundle appealing maybe to the early morning people. 70 and 50 are our prices, getting 120. And the first thing we want to do is determine how many people will buy this bundle. Well, in this case, we've got people that value coffee and value bananas differently. But if they want to buy both, we know that we'll end up selling 2 at this bundle. So we'll sell 2 units based on what we know about demand. And that means our total revenues selling 2 units, that is 2 bundles, would be $240. But the total costs associated with 1 coffee and 1 banana are 50 cents for the bundle, and multiplying that by 2, we have total costs of $100. So our total profitability for the bundle with 1 coffee and 1 banana priced at $120 would be $140. Let's compare that to a bundle of 1 coffee and 1 banana at a price of $160. And $160 we're coming up with a bundle that seems to appeal to the late class types. If we appeal to the late class types, we know that the price of this bundle exceeds the individual valuations together for the early morning types, and so we'll only end up selling 1 of these bundles because it's just simply too expensive for the early morning types. If we do that, we'll have total revenues of $160. But we know the costs associated with producing this bundle are 10 cents for a cup of coffee and 40 cents for a banana, so that'll give me 50 cents total cost for a bundle. And that means the profitability in this case is the difference between those things, 110 cents. And so the difference between these two coffee bundles that we see are about 30 cents so far. But there are two other possible bundles that we could come up with. What if we sold one coffee and one banana at a price of $1.70? Pricing at $1.70, we're essentially taking the high-value people from the morning for coffee and the high-value morning people for the late classes and putting those two prices together. But this bundle is simply too expensive for anybody, and so we know we'll end up selling 0 units, which means our total revenues are 0. The total cost associated with producing this bundle, 170, would be 50. And so if we even considered pricing this thing, we might end up taking a loss. And then finally, one coffee and one banana. We can also choose the price scheme based on the low price for bananas and the low price for coffee going across these two time periods and types. And we'll have a bundle priced at 110 cents, or $1.10. In this case, this is a pretty cheap bundle. It's the cheapest priced bundle we can find, and we'll end up selling 2 of them for total revenues of $220. If we ended up producing these, the total cost associated with them would be $100. Or 100 cents, and so we've got total profits of 120. So the bundle that appears to give us the highest level of profitability would be the first bundle, where we're pricing a bundle of one coffee and one banana at $120, and we'll have total profits here of 140 cents, or $1.40. So if we were to choose pricing as bundle, we would choose the one coffee, one banana for 120 price. And we know that our total profits in this case are going to be 140 cents, or $1.40. Compare that to what we did with individual pricing. Above, with individual pricing, we saw that profits were $1.60, and here with bundling, profits are $1.40. So we would be inclined to say this firm would be better off, perhaps pricing individually, since the total profits of the best the best pricing schemes for individual pricing are more than the pricing for bundles, or profits for bundles. However, we could go one step further. We could do some kind of a mixed bundle or mixed pricing scheme. So what if we, for example, were to price, offer one bundle which is the bundle of one coffee and one banana, and let's charge $1.60 for that. We know from the above table we'll end up selling one of them, which means we'll have profits associated with that of $110. 110 cents. And then we know that we're only going to be selling coffee to one individual, and that individual would be the person who's willing to pay the most for it. But we could also then offer coffee separately. So instead of a bundle with coffee, we're also going to offer a coffee at 70 cents, appealing to one other consumer, that is the morning consumer. And the morning consumer will end up paying for coffee. So we'll sell one coffee. Total revenues associated with that are 70 cents. Total costs are 10 cents. And we end up getting total profits according to this pricing scheme of 170 cents. So in this instance, we will choose a mixed bundle or complex pricing. In one case, we use one bundle, which appeals to the late class types, and then one individual price, which appeals to the morning types. So what we've done is compared different pricing schemes, both pricing separately for two goods, knowing two different types, pricing as bundles, comparing the pricing between those two examples, and then ultimately we come up with a pricing scheme that maximizes profits. And in this example, that would be a mixed bundle of one bundle and then charging for coffee individually for the highest level of profits.